Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today we have my September wrap-up. September was bananas. When I sat down to do my journal, I knew I read a lot because I was reading the Heartland series, which there's 25 books that I wanted to read for that. I was reading a bunch of children's books, or rereading a bunch of children's books, plus, just general books I was excited about. And I also decided to participate in Orilium, and my scholar is very ambitious, Avani. She's going for the Godseer, Necromancy, and Herbologist calling. I'll link the video down below where I created the character, but everything that I created really works for those callings, and so I wanted to do them all. I did fall a little short, however, I'm calling it a win because I will be reading the last 2 books I need to this first week in October. Now, it won't count, for the stats for the readathon or anything, but I'm going to call it good because I just needed those extra few days, but they will get read right away, on the tail end. So I'm going to call it, and plus some things came up. One, I had my birthday. We celebrated on Friday the 13th because that's one of my favorite days when it pops up. And so even though that's not my birthday, that's when we kind of celebrated it. And then unexpectedly, I had to take my one dog to the vet, Boo Boo. If you saw my reading vlog where the pets picked, you'll have met Boo Boo. She's fine. Just had a little UTI issue, and so I noticed peeing on the floor, called the vet, and they're like, "Hey, come in an hour." And I was like, okay. So I had to rush and do that, and then my mother-in-law came over for some ham. We were cooking ham, and I wasn't planning on that. I was like, I'm gonna have my husband cook what I just read. But then my mother-in-law came over, so that took a little time away from it as well. So yeah, I'm gonna count my Orilium as a win. Like I said, I am short 2 books. Because the callings kind of overlap a little bit, the classes do. Technically, one of the books I read for Poisonous Plant on the cover would cover the other book that I didn't get to because they're all in a series, which you'll see here in a second. And then the other one was a loved one pick under the Godseer calling, so I missed one for Godseer and one for Herbologist. But because I'm going to read them right away this first week in October, I'm going to call it a win. Especially because I read a lot, and I'm very, very happy with the month. Like I said, it was bananas, and you'll see why. But yeah, I was really excited that I was finally able to participate in Orilium. Like I said, I just didn't think I was going to because it was my birthday month, and I had planned to participate in August, and then when it got changed, I know there's talk that it might stick to September going forward, which I really hope it doesn't. But if it does, I'll just make it work. So, but yeah, I read an insane amount of books. Now, keep in mind when I give you this number, the majority of these are children's books, children's/middle grade. So they're not all full-length novels. But I ended up reading 54 books in September, which is insane. Absolutely insane. 22 of those were the Heartland books, and then, like I said, a good chunk of them were children's books as well. But the total page count was also insane. It was 12,000. Let me find the page where it is. 12,082 pages. Like I said, 54 books. They were all physical. I didn't have any digital or any audio. All of them were fiction. On Storygraphs, it said one of them was nonfiction, which it has actual factual information, but it's not nonfiction. It is a fiction. So they were all fiction. I had 33 rereads, which, like I said, that was kind of the whole idea. Going into September, I wanted to read a lot from my childhood and then reread a bunch of the Heartland books. And my top moods were mysterious, adventurous, and lighthearted. Genres, again, these overlap, but I had 29 middle grade, 24 contemporary, 17 fantasy, 10 children's, 6 young adult, 6 romance, 5 mystery, 2 erotica, 2 LGBTQIA+, 2 thriller, 2 literary, 1 classics, 1 magical realism, 1 short stories, 1 science, 1 horror, and 1 historical. And yeah, it was just a crazy month. And also, I actually have 2 more books that I did read as well. They're children's books. And because normally I do count children's books, I think they're perfectly valid in my counting, but in this case I did not, just because my journal was already like full, because I kind of set up the month before, and then generally I have space for extras, but in this case I didn't. I wasn't planning on any extras because I already had an overly ambitious TBR. So these 2 children's books I didn't add into here. So technically I actually read 56 books. But yeah, it was crazy. So let's go ahead and get into it. So if you're new to my channel, the way I do it is I go from the bottom and work my way up to my favorite read of the month. And then I also have a top 3, which doesn't necessarily correspond with star rating. It's just the ones that have really stuck with me and had the most impact in the month, even if they didn't necessarily get a higher star rating. And as far as the Heartland books, I just separated them into what star rating, into piles of star rating. I'm not going to go through those individually. This video is already going to be insanely long, so I'm not going to go through those individually, but I'm just going to kind of talk about them as a whole and, you know, why that chunk got a lower star rating or whatnot. But let's go ahead and start. We're going to start with the books I did not get to, and I'm not rolling over because October is already looking a little crazy with the books I'm rolling over. So these 4 books I did not get to and I did not roll over. The first one is Neon Gods by Kody Robert. This one I kind of had in a pile with Hooked and Priest, which I'll be talking about coming up. And so I had added it on just because those 3 I kind of wanted to read around the same time because they kind of have similar vibes, I think. But this one I was not able to get to. I'm not rolling this over. I probably won't get to this one anytime soon. It's one that I've kind of been intrigued by, but I haven't really desperately wanted to read it or anything. I just happened to find it at a thrift store and was like, you know, I am kind of intrigued by that. So this is going to go back onto the shelf and will probably not get read until if it's a prop for something or something like that. So there's that one. The other one I am sad I didn't get to. I really wanted to. This was gifted by Michelle at Reading on My Breaks, and that's Wild Women and the Blues by Denny S. Bryce. I've had this for a little while now and I have wanted to get to it. It just hasn't really worked out. I'm going to try to get this on my November TBR. If I can't, then I want to read it, you know, first thing next year because my December plans are already set. But I am going to try to get this on November's TBR, but we'll just have to see. There's that one. And then we have the last one. So when I did my game in July, I did it for July, August, and September, planning on Orilium and then my birthday month. And this is the last book from that game play. So unfortunately, I'm not going to get my reward because I did not get to the last book. And that's Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling. I reread the Harry Potter series this year, and so I have this one and the next one, which I'll show you. And I just wasn't able to get to them. So these I will be getting to. Again, I'm going to try to maybe at the end of October if I can get to them. If not, in November, I would like to read at least this one. If not, both of these, which the other one is, of course, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is the final book in the series. Like I said, I would like to finish my reread this year, so if I can squeeze one of them into October and the other in November, I would love that. Otherwise, if I don't, I'll definitely try to get them first thing in January and get my reread of the series wrapped up. So those are the 4 books that will not be rolling over at all. They're just going back on the shelf. Again, I don't get my reward because the Harry Potter, second to last Harry Potter book was for that July through September gameplay, and it was just the last book, but with participating in Orilium and everything else, I just didn't have time to get to it. So now we have the books that will be rolling over. They're for specific things, and so I still need to get them read, and so these will all be rolling over. The first 2 are part of my ABC title challenge. And so I've been reading a set of books to fulfill, the different letters of the alphabet. And unfortunately, I did have one roll over from August, and I actually DNF'd the book that was for that and then read another book in its place, but I did get R read, and so I also had already read S, so we got R and S, and now we're up to T, which is Toilet Bound Hanako-Kun by AidaIro, and so this is just a little graphic novel, or not graphic novel, manga, sorry. And so I will be reading this. This will be super easy to get read. And then I also have my U author, which is, or U title, which is Unspoken by Lisa Jackson, which actually should work well for October vibes. So I'll be rolling over both of these and getting these read. I'm going to try to get these read within this first week of October as well. So there are those. And then we have my Buzzword from August. I did get my September Buzzword read, but not the one from August. So this had rolled over into September, and now it's going to roll over into October, which is Like a River Glorious by Ray Carson. The Buzzword being like. This one is the second in a series, which the first one in the series I absolutely loved. I'm really excited to read this one. I just keep running out of time. This is kind of lower priority, but this one will be rolling over because I do want to keep up with the buzzwords, and I really don't want to have to roll it over into November as well. So hoping I can get to this one in October. And then I participate in, and buzzwords put on by Kayla at Books and Lala, linked down below, as well as this other creator. And so I participate in Autism Reads, which is put on by Christine at An Autistic Reader, again linked down below. And I'm now 2 months behind, so I have 3 books to read in October. Our August pick was A Prayer for Vengeance by Leanne Schwartz. It is very shiny. So this was our August pick, and then for September the pick was A Kind of Spark by L. McNicol, Lux Library book. So I do need to read both of these so that way I'm up to date, and then plus the choice for October. So those are going to roll over as well. Again, a little bit lower priority. And then these next section is a little bit higher priority. So I did not end up touching Mind Games by Nora Roberts at all this month. This has been rolling over. My husband and I read this together out loud, and we just have the last section left, part 3 left, which is about 137 pages. We should be able to knock it out within a weekend. It's just I was really, really busy, and so we didn't have time. And then the nights that we did have time, we were both really tired, and so this one will get knocked out. I'm gonna push to do it this weekend and just get it done, especially because the next one in her series books comes out in November, and so we need to have this one finished up so we can jump back into that one. And so that one is a priority. I did not get to 3 of the Heartland books, 3 of the special editions. So we have all 3 of those. We have Beyond the Horizon, A Winter's Gift, and A Summer to Remember. And so these, kind of the way I worked it in September was I would read one of these and then jump into another read. So I would read one of these a day. If I got a little bit behind, I would read 2 in a day. But they are all, I think one of these is just over 200. It's like 202 pages. But otherwise, all the books have been between 150 to 200 pages. And so these are really simple to get read and then also read another book. So I'll be reading these this first week and getting them finished as well. And then we have the 2 I did not get to for Orilium, and like I said, they are part of a series. So the other one, which is for my herbologist, Calling Restoration, Poisonous Plant on the cover, and that's Foxglove by Adeline Grace. And then for my Godseer Calling, it was for Demonology, and it was a non-reader picture read, and my husband picked Wisteria by Adeline Grace, because I got one other book that I'll talk about, and then Wisteria. They were like the 2 books that if I couldn't get anything else, those were the books I wanted for my birthday. And he knew I was really excited about them, so that's what he picked for those prompts. And yeah, I just ended up not getting a chance. I did get Belladonna done, but these two I just didn't have time for. But I will be reading these right away. Like, I've been anticipating Wisteria for so long. Foxglove I loved even more than Belladonna. I just finished reading Belladonna, so I'll be jumping right into Foxglove actually tonight. And then these will be my first reads of October actually. So like I said, even though I didn't quite get to them during December, I'm still counting it as a win for my different callings. Then we have the two kind of bonus books. The first one was actually a gift from Sam at Sam's Bookish Faves, and that was the Pokey Little Puppy. So this one, I did my 37 books for 37 years, and this was kind of an honorable mention. I was obsessed with this little book when I was little. I absolutely love the Pokey Little Puppy, and so Sam sent this to me as a gift. Thank you so much again. And I made my husband sit and listen to me read it, and I showed him the little pictures, and I still love this so much. It made me smile. There's kind of a repetitiveness to it that just makes my little autistic heart just like, ooh, I love it. And so it's about this little Pokey puppy and his little Pokey, well, the siblings aren't Pokey, he's Pokey. And basically they dig a hole under the fence and go romping around, and he's Pokey, and so he gets back late, and the other puppies have already been punished, and he gets to eat like all the dessert for himself. And then at the end it kind of backfires on him. This is definitely a 5-star. I absolutely love it. And it just made my heart so happy. So thank you again, Sam. I absolutely appreciate you sending this to me. And so yeah, I made my husband listen as I read that loud. And then when we did my birthday shopping, we went to Barnes & Noble, and my husband saw this, and kind of our couple animal, I guess, is owls. And so he saw The Night Owl by Christopher Denise, and he's like, we should get that. And so we did read this that night when we got home. We read this, and this is all about an owl who wants to become a knight, and has beautiful pictures. And so it's about him, and he wants to become a knight, and there's a dragon in there, and it just was really, really cute as well. So those are kind of the two bonus reads that I didn't count because, again, I would give the Night Owl, I would give it probably like 4 stars. It was super cute. But yeah, I really enjoyed both of those. And now let's go ahead and get to the book. So I did have one DNF, and that was the rollover for my R title. And that was Write 'em As They Come by Rusty Tulk. So this is a autobiography that some of his family and friends put together after he passed away. And it's about a guy who is local to my area, and he's just talking about cowboy life kind of around the turn of the century and then the early 1900s. And it was just really dense, like it's super dense, and he obviously uses a lot of slang and such. It does have endnotes that you can kind of go and look at things, but it would have been better if it had footnotes, because as dense as it is and such, having to turn to the back to try to figure stuff out, it's just not it. And I probably will keep this one. I don't know that I'll ever actually read it because it is so dense, but I think it's just so unique, and I would hate for it to, to just end up in the trash somewhere or something. So I'll probably keep it on my shelves. Just, I kind of like the idea of it. It's just dense and with all the slang and such, and it's just not really a life like you can relate to nowadays. So yeah, that one did get DNF'd. And like I said, it'll just kind of be on my shelves. Then we did have, and DNFs are my 1 stars. I don't log them on Goodreads or Storygraphs. Well, I rarely log them on Goodreads and Storygraph. They have to be extra bad if I do. But in this case, it was dense, and I knew I had a big month ahead of me, and I didn't want to slog through it. So, and then we had two stars. The first one is one of the Heartland books. This is actually the first special edition. This is a holiday memory, and these are by Lauren Brooke. And so with this one, the reason it was 2 stars is this one's reflecting back. So it's reflecting, her and Lou are reflecting on their last Christmas with their mom. And this one just made me so mad because it's really not even like, yeah, it's kind of reflecting, but it's really more about the drama between Amy and Sundance, who is her pony. And throughout the whole series, you know Sundance, like he's a prominent part of the whole series. And the whole reason why, because the premise of these books is her mom ends up dying, and she's kind of trying to carry on her mom's legacy of rescuing. She works with like horses with trauma or behavioral issues, and that helps pay for rescuing horses with the same kind of issues. And so she's trying to carry on her mom's legacy, but they kind of have this rule that every horse gets rehomed. Like they come, they get treated, and they find a home. Like they don't keep the horses. Sundance is one of the exceptions. There's 2 ponies that are an exception to that, and Sundance is one of them. And throughout the whole series, it's because he's very moody. He bonded with Amy, but with everybody else, he's very temperamental and difficult. And so she's kept him. Like he's a permanent resident because of his kind of behavioral issues that are never gonna go away, and his bond with Amy. And then in Amy's journal, which is another, not really a special edition, but kind of a companion to the series, which goes in a little bit more background, they talk about Sundance and Amy's first show. And at that point, Amy's worried that her mom's gonna sell Sundance, basically. He has an affinity for jumping, and she's gonna sell him. And so it talks about her first show, and that was written 2 years before this one, and this takes place the winter after those summer shows. This one completely ignored everything she had built. In this one, they're trying to rehome Sundance, but he's being temperamental, and discouraging people from wanting to buy him. Amy's having trouble with him. He all of a sudden now has battled colic since they got him, which was never mentioned in the original series, which, okay, I can kind of overlook that. Like, maybe that is a thing you're trying to build, a past plot, whatever. But the whole reason Amy now gets to keep him is because she ends up staying up late to save him from colic, and her mom rewards that by letting her keep him, which that's not what was built in the whole rest of the series. And plus, she's already been told she could keep him at the summer show. Like, that's already happened. So it just really made me mad. And I had some other inconsistencies, issues with the series, but that just really, really made me mad. And again, it wasn't even really about the reflection on their last Christmas with their mom. It was a reflection on her and Sundance. And yeah, Lou comes to visit and everything else, but it was really about her and Sundance. And so yeah, I just didn't like this one. So this got 2 stars. I was very, very disappointed by it. And then my other 2-star reads was for animal studies, and this needed to have a phoenix in the title or on the cover. And this was for necromancy, and that was The Curse of the Chocolate Phoenix by Kate Saunders. Yeah. Like, this was so over the top, and this was an extra one that I added on. But like I said, I found a children's book just to make it a little easier, because I didn't have any phoenixes in anything I was reading or anything like that, or on my shelves. But yeah, this one, so basically you have these 2 twins and their friend, and this is the second in the series. I never read the first one, and I figured it would be fine, and it was. But basically, they have like a little bit of magical powers, and the twins' ancestor had a chocolate shop, but he would do like magic chocolate. And so there's this chocolate phoenix that basically allows the person to go back in time. And there's these evil sisters that are trying to mess with the time stream, and that way they can kind of, wreak destruction, all amok. And the premise of it was fine. There's some talking animals that are like immortal because they were tested on. There's a rat and a cat, and they were tested on by their original person who had the chocolate shop and such, and so they're immortal. And it just was so over the top right from the beginning, and I really couldn't enjoy the plot because of how over the top it was. And then the evil villains, they're bickering like they're sisters, and they're bickering, and I get the author was trying to go for lighthearted and fun, but it was just ridiculous. Like, it was just so over the top, it was ridiculous. And the cat was like Miss Diva, and again, just so over the top. Like, she could have done it without being so over the top. The cat could have still been a diva, could have still had that sisterly bickering and whatnot, but it was just so over the top. Like, I could not enjoy the story at all. And then, like, again, there was just random stuff that didn't really add to the story, that seemed like it was more done for shock value, like this pet dinosaur that's a pet of these giants, and it was just so overdone, that I just couldn't enjoy the story. And then they have like this vampire bodyguard who's the same age as them, and she's supposed to be like one of their top agents, because there's like the secret government, program or whatever. One of their top agents is set as a bodyguard for these guys because the evil villains need their DNA to make this chocolate phoenix work. And so they send this 11-year-old vampire bodyguard, but like she's supposed to be so amazing, she's constantly failing, and then it's kind of all woe is me, and it just wasn't very believable. Like, yeah, okay, I can see it. They're 11 years old. They need a bodyguard that's going to kind of fit in with them, not an adult. So I could see it, but it just wasn't done very well. Like, she was just pathetic as a bodyguard, and it's like she's supposed to be this amazing vampire bodyguard that has done all these missions and like one of your top agents, but yeah, she's just failing over and over again. Like, no. And so yeah, I just did not enjoy this. I will be unhauling this. But it was what it was. So that was my other 2-star. Then we had 7 3-stars, 4 of which were the Heartland books. Bottom of the barrel, though, was I reread the Wayside School series by Louis Sakar. And the bottom of the barrel is the 3rd one in the series, which is Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger. I never read this one as a kid. I didn't read it until I bought them as an adult to reread. And I just don't like this one. Like, you don't have the teacher, Miss Jewel. So you have a bunch of these random teachers. The first 2 in the series are told more like little individual clips than like a story with a full plot line throughout. It's just individual clips of different things happening at the school with different students and such. And it mainly follows Mrs. Jules' class, which is on the 30th story. You get a little bit of Miss Zarvis's class, which is on the 19th story, but there is no 19th story, so there is no Miss Zarvis. And these are just quirky and fun, but this one, I don't know, I didn't like all the different teachers. It had more of like a plot throughout the book, and I just really didn't like that format with it either, and I just didn't like this one. It still has that fun quirkiness of the others, but it's just not my favorite. And this was for Inscription, and I believe that was your name, and this was for Godseer, and it was your name spelled in the title. And so there's WHITNE in Wayside. So this one spelt my name. So it worked for that. And then we had 4 of the Heartland books. And so we had number 7, Out of the Darkness. And we had number 13, 14, and 15, which is Darkest Hour, Everything Changes, and A Season of Hope. And these ones I just didn't like because, again, kind of the inconsistencies in some of these, and then also the angst. And so as the series as a whole, there's 3 other instances that really stand out in my mind that were inconsistent. And I don't know that they're specifically in these books. Like I said, they're kind of, I'm just lumping them together. But one of them, Amy and Ty kiss, and in the next book she says it's at the Grant's Christmas party when it wasn't. It was on Christmas Eve at Heartland. Another one was there's this foal that they have that they're working with that's kind of high strung and such. And in the first book that it's in, she says it's a girl, like it's a filly. And then in the next book, all of a sudden it's a colt, which is a male foal. And then it's a colt for the rest of the series that it's in. And then there's another one, they rescue these 5 horses, and at the end of one book, one of their clients is interested in adopting the one horse for her daughter, but then in the next book, it's there. And it never got adopted. It's just little inconsistencies like that. There's also a lot of ink sometimes in these, and a lot of times it doesn't necessarily feel believable. It feels like it's just done just to add the drama of the story, not necessarily that it really fits in the character. Especially there's one with Amy's friend Soraya, where she's all angsty about her relationship with her boyfriend, and it's just a little big angst fest. And that didn't really feel true to Soraya's character. Amy's a little bit more temperamental and such, so some of that angst you can like believe because that's her personality. Yeah, so these 4 books only got 3 stars because of the angst or the inconsistencies and such. So there are those. Then we have our next 3-star, which was for alchemy for herbology, and this was one that was indie published and then picked up traditionally, and from what I found online that this fits the bill, and that was Priest by Sierra Simone. And this was part of my vlog where I had my pets pick my reads, and then I vlogged it. And so if you want more of my thoughts on this, you can go check out that vlog. I'll leave it down below. But this one, I liked it on one hand. I kind of like that moral dilemma, especially our main character, Tyler. So basically, he's a priest, and he ends up in a relationship with one of his flock congregation, and she's not actually religious, but she's had some things go down, and she ends up in this town, and she ends up coming to confession, and is kind of like exploring that a little bit. But they end up in a relationship together, and it is very smutty, very spicy, so keep that in mind. And that didn't necessarily bother me so much, but there's just certain things within that I just don't believe Tyler as a character would do. I mean, he is breaking his vows, having relations with this woman in the church at times. But there's just a couple incidents where he's like using certain things that are sacred and such. And to me, it's just like, I just don't see him doing that. There's also kind of a backstory with an incident with Tyler's sister, and then also the previous priest of his congregation, that just kind of got left behind, which is a little bit frustrating. Tyler is very toxic, honestly, and just kind of his whole attitude. Like, I didn't like Tyler as a character. It had nothing to do with him being a priest and breaking his vows. It had to do with kind of his attitude about his toxic behavior. And then also our main, the love interest, Poppy, some of the choices she made didn't really feel true to her character. It was very like immature and such. And so it just like she created these characters and then had to make choices that just didn't feel really true to them. And it felt like it was just done for the shock value or the smut shock value. And it didn't really feel true to the characters that she created. And so that's why this got 3 stars. I am interested. I have the second one already, and I am interested in reading that one. But yeah, there's just that one, there was just some things that just didn't really feel good. The next one is for demonology, which is under necromancy, and this was for a non-reader picture book. And for that one, the other book I was really excited to get for my birthday was Tiger's Tail by Colleen Hook. I loved the original series of this. It's about two brothers who are cursed to be tigers, and they have to go on like this adventure to find these like pendants and help break the curse. So in this one, the whole premise is now you're following these two sisters, and it's kind of, I was curious how it was going to tie into the original books, and basically how it ties in is you have Kadam, and he's telling Kashan, who Kashan is one of the brothers, and Kadam was like their advisor, and he's telling him about this time when he was kind of away from them, and kind of this alternate reality world of if the brothers had never been born, the tiger's curse would still exist, but it went on to these sisters instead. So this is kind of like an alternate reality. If they hadn't been born, this would have played out and such. And so you have these two twin sisters, and in the beginning, she's harping like repetitively, like very, very repetitively, how they're twin sisters. They don't know which one's older because the ribbon marking them fell off when they were babies. It fell off before they could find any distinguishing marks or anything, so nobody knows which twin is older. And so they don't know who's set to inherit the throne. Neither twin wants the throne. And it's just very repetitive on that. Like, neither twin wants the throne. One of them has to inherit the throne over and over and over. And I was like, oh my goodness. It kind of smooths out a little bit after that. And so you're really not following the sisters, though, which in the other books you're following Kelsey mainly. And she's the main character, so it kind of made sense for this. But the brothers at least played a bigger part in the other books. Like, they were very present. They didn't feel like side characters. In this case, the sisters felt like side characters. Like, they weren't very present. And so you're mainly following Nikolai, who is in love with the one sister. And so you're kind of getting his backstory and kind of his history. And then at one point you go to like this dark sorcerer and a little bit about his backstory, and he's searching for these pendants. In the other books there's 5 pendants, in this one there's 7 pendants. And so this dark sorcerer is searching for the pendants, and he decides to approach the sisters and try to get them married so he could use the Empire as a resource in his search for these pendants. And then something happens, and the sisters have some of the pendants, and so kind of a fight, and then they end up getting cursed into tigers. And so they have a soldier who's like, hey, like, you need to go to my people. They know about the tigers, but keep them hidden. And he's telling Nikolai this. So then that's when the story kind of really takes off. And they go on this adventure to find these people so they can learn about the curse. And they have to find the shaman. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. This book was pointless. The whole first half, everything that happened in the first half, the harping on how one of the sisters has to choose, has to be take over the throne and such. And then this whole thing with the dark sorcerer, completely pointless by the second half. It's completely forgotten about. Which it probably, she set this up so it's gonna continue on in a series, but it's like you harp so much on the whole throne issue, and then you spent so much time on this dark sorcerer. Like, that part should have been present throughout. But once the sisters are tigers, like, they can't talk to each other. And so you're following still Nikolai, and then you end up following this hunter, which that part the sister was a little more present when she meets this hunter who becomes involved. You get a little bit more of one of the sisters. But yeah, you're basically, the sisters are like side characters. You end up having 4 boys. The hunter, the soldier, Nikolai, and then this priest, and then you get one of the people they're going to, a boy from there. And so it's mainly about them, and then, they do their journey or whatever, which is nothing really happens. You don't hear anything about the Dark Sorcerer or anything like that. You get a hint of the Dark Sorcerer at one point towards the end of their journey, and then they go find the shaman, and like nothing happens. Nothing happens. This book was pointless. And it is setting up for what looks like to be exciting things in the future, but this book itself was pointless. Like, she could have, given us a little bit of the backstory within a few chapters, not harped like 3 chapters in on how important it was that one of these sisters choose the throne. And honestly, the Dark Sorcerer could have come about later. Like, it was just nothing happened. It was so frustrating. I was looking so forward to this, and the book was pointless. The book is pointless. I am hoping we get another book sooner rather than later. Like I said, it's set up for it, but I've heard no commentary that this is supposed to be like so many books in a series or anything like that. So I don't know if she created this trying to get publishers interested in doing the series, like continuing the series or what. But this book in itself was pointless. I am really interested. It has a lot of Russian culture and like some folklore and such, which I'm really interested in, and I am interested in the premise of it. It's just this book in itself was pointless. So there is that, and so that is all my 3 stars. Then we ended up having 15 4 stars. And so the bottom of the barrel, this is like a 3-book collection, but the one that is the 4-star is Bunnicula Strikes Again. And so this has Bunnicula Holiday Inn and Bunnicula Strikes Again, which is back here. You can see the little cover. And yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of Bunnicula Strikes Again. So you have you have this dog and cat, which are part of this family with 2 boys and the parents and such. And basically the premise of this series is they get this bunny and vegetables are being drained, and the dog thinks there's something wrong with this bunny and he's draining, and they learn he's a vampire. And so in Bunnicula Strikes Again, you just have this new puppy that I don't really like, and the whole premise of it is Bunnicula is acting weird again, and they think he's trying to find his mother, and like just the whole plot and everything, I'm just not a huge fan of. Like, it's still cute. I still love the Bunnicula series. It's just not my favorite. So that's why that one specifically is kind of lower down on the 4-star. Honestly, it's probably even more of a 3-star, but I really do like the characters. And then we have this one, which was for Conjuration Undergods here, and this was to read a book with a bat on the cover. And so this was an extra one I had to add on. So I went with There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Bat by Lucille Calandro, illustrated by Jared Lee. I love the rhyme, There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. Like, I was obsessed with that as a kid. I would recite it all the time. When my nieces were little, I would recite it to them, and I would do the spider that wiggles and jiggles and giggles inside her or whatever. I would do like a little funny voice. Like, I'm obsessed. I love repetition and such. Yeah, it's just very pleasing to me. And this one was cute. Like, you still kind of get that old lady vibes, but the rhymes weren't that great. And kind of like the different followings and such. It was cute, but it wasn't as pleasing as the original There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. That went really well one after another, and worked really well together. This one, just some of the rhymes that didn't really rhyme and didn't really work all that great together. So that's why, still cute. I still really enjoyed it, but more of a 4-star. Then we have 8 Heartland books. So we have book 1, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 20. So we have all these 3. And these ones, again, they were either just a little angsty, or there's just something about them. Like, the plot wasn't necessarily as enjoyable, didn't draw me in as much, or they were a little bit more angsty or whatever. That's what made these a 4-star instead of a 5-star, but they still gave me the good, gooey Heartland feels. So there is those ones. Make sure they don't fall down there. Then we have 2 more of the Wayside books. So this is the 4th book, and it's Wayside School Beneath The Cloud of Doom. Again, these are by Louis Sakar. So this one, again, it doesn't follow the same format as the first two. So there's more of like a direct plot through the book. And we do have Miss Jules back, which I appreciated. But it just wasn't as cute and fun as the one that I had as a kid. And so I still really enjoyed this, but it just wasn't quite a 5-star for me. And then the other one is actually the first book in the series, which I never read as a kid either, and that was Sideways Stories from Wayside School. And so this one follows more of that, like you have little individual clips, little stories following different students from the 30th floor, and you're kind of introduced to the students and whatnot. And I like the background we get in this one that sets up for the next one, but I had never read this as a kid. I had the second one in the series and I was obsessed with that, and that's what prompted me to get the others in the series. And they're just quirky and fun and kind of punny, and just really enjoyable. So there is that one. And then let's see here. Next we had, this was for Lore, Under My Godseer Calling, and that was Hooked by Emily McIntyre. And so this was a fairy tale retelling. Now, in the beginning, there's a little note, and it's very adamant in bold lettering that this is not a fairy tale retelling. This is a fractured fairy tale, and it's based on Peter Pan. And so in my mind, it's all kind of reimagining, retelling. Like, yeah, it doesn't necessarily follow the plot points of the original fairy tale, but you still took a lot from the original fairy tale. So in my mind, it's retelling, and that was the prompt for Orilium. And so in this one, like I said, it's based on Peter Pan. So basically you have James, who is Hook, and he is set on revenge against Peter Michaels. And then you have Peter Michaels' daughter Wendy, and then Jonathan. And Michael is obviously not there. You just have the two siblings, and Michael comes in with the last name. And so he's kind of set on taking revenge on Peter Michaels for something that happened in his past. And Peter Michael is kind of a big deal in the world. And then James kind of has like this criminal underground thing going on. And he ends up meeting Wendy and decides, that she's going to kind of be his revenge, but obviously feelings ensue. And overall, I really like this. It is very dark, is very spicy. And overall, I did like it. Again, this was part of my birthday vlog where the dogs picked, or the animals picked. Will Watson, one of the cats, actually picked this. And the reason I didn't give it 5 stars is James is supposed to be kind of big and bad, but at the end you really don't get that. And so that just kind of dropped it down a little bit for me, because you really don't get that. And there's some things that happen, and it's just like, you're supposed to be this big bad dude. Like, what the heck's going on? And it kind of works, like, reflecting on it now, because, like, in the original, Hook is kind of like, he tries to be bad, but he's always kind of failing at it. But I really like James is not a likable character. He's not likable. He's a villain. But you can kind of see why he's a villain. And so having his backstory, you kind of see it. I did really like Wendy. I enjoyed her. I liked the little nods to Peter Pan and such, but just kind of the way it played out and how James was towards the end just dropped it down a little bit for me. But I did really enjoy it overall. I definitely plan on trying to get the next one, which is Scarred by this author. But yeah, it just wasn't a full 5 stars. And definitely check trigger warnings and everything. Like, there's abuse and such, so definitely check that. Then next, this was actually for my Genre-a-thon, and it also worked for Lore Under Godseer, which was to read a translated book. So this was level Q, or Q level, and that's Inkheart by Cornelia Funke. And yeah, overall, I actually really enjoyed this. But it did get kind of repetitive at times. Like, the plot didn't really seem to progress. It was like the same plot multiple times, a couple times. And so that's kind of what dropped it down. But I did really enjoy it. In this book, you have I'm horrible. I'm horrible at names, guys. And there were so many books. Meggie. And her father can read characters out of books. And so something happens when she was a baby where an evil villain came out and then her mother got sucked into the book. And so now it's kind of Maggie's a little bit older and this villain's basically coming after her father. And there's her aunt or great aunt, and I really like that character. She's a bit silly, like obsessed with her books, doesn't really like children. There's Dustfinger, who is another character from a book, and he has like this marten that has like horns and such. So there's a lot of great characters in here. I like the writing. It was very vivid. I like kind of the way the age group played with each other, like interacted and such with each other. It was just a little bit repetitive, and that's what kind of dropped it down for me as far as the plot goes. But I did really enjoy it. And then let's see here, our last one of our 4-star reads was another one for my birthday blog, and that was Ink Blood Sister Scribe by Emma Torres. And again, one I really, really enjoyed. So the premise of this one, you have two sisters, and again, I kind of wish that these ones had been twins, because there's a mirror magic element in here that would have worked really, really well if you had like mirror twins, but they're just sister, one's older, one's younger. And then there's also a third point of view, which is this guy, but basically books have magic, and you kind of have two different, well, three different. You have like normal people, but then you have people that can sense the magic, and then you also have scribes, which magic has no effect on them. They can't sense it or anything, but they can write the books that have the magic. And it's blood magic, so keep that in mind in case blood is triggering for you. It is blood magic in here. Then you also have that mirror element. The reason this didn't get 5 stars, I really, really like this one, but you're jumping between the different point of views, and it felt like it was kind of slow pace and like slow build, and it felt like every time something would start to happen, you would change point of view and you would lose momentum, and so it just kept losing momentum. But otherwise, I really, really like this. I found it really interesting. I really enjoyed it. It's just, and I like multiple point of views. Like, I don't have a problem with that. It was just the way this was done. It lost momentum every time it would switch point of views. But I did really, really enjoy that one. So there is that one. Then we had 35 stars, which is absolutely amazing. Kind of bottom of the barrel is another one for Conjuration under Necromancy. And so again, Bat on the cover or in the title. And so I went with The Magic School Bus Going Batty, a book about bats. This is the one that Storygraph said was nonfiction. It is informative, but it is not nonfiction. So, and yeah, so basically it's about bats, and if you're familiar with the Magic School Bus, you have Miss Frizz, and they go on these field trips, and things always happen, like fun, wacky things, but they're learning why they're on these field trips. And in this case, she takes their parents. It's like parents' night, and so they're like, oh no, our parents are gonna be exposed to this, and so they go and explore. And then it has a little bit of information about bats at the end and everything. So it is informative, but it's not nonfiction. And yeah, this is just so adorable. I never read the books. I didn't even know there were books until recently, but I love The Magic School Bus, watching it growing up. And so that's 5 stars, but it's not so amazing it would beat out any of my other 5 stars. Then we have the last 9 of the Heartland books. So we have 2, 3, 5, 6, 15, 16, 18, 19, and Amy's journal. And these are just the ones that were really stood out to me reading them. And so like either the plot was really good, or the case, whatever horse they were working on, or horses, was really good. The angst wasn't as present, like the emotions and such felt more real than just angsty and for drama's sake and whatever. These books I read when it was just after 9/11 happened. That year, like, we left my mom's husband, my ex-stepdad at that time. It was 9/11, it was my birthday, and that's when my mom took me and got the first of these books. And so there's a lot of nostalgia there. And I still find them enjoyable, like the different cases with the horses. I really liked Amy's journal because you get a little bit more background in the different like therapies they use, because they use alternative therapies. So the different therapies they use, a little bit more background on like how Sundance came into her life, and things like that, like her first show with Sundance and everything like that. And it also gives you like a little picture of how Heartland's set up, so I was able to better visualize how things are set up and whatnot. And so yeah, those books just gave me all the good feels. I mean, it's a very emotional series because she lost her mom and she's processing a lot, and there's a lot of growth Amy goes through, and her and Lou go through together and such. And so yeah, I just like, some of those gave me that nostalgic feeling. There is like a kind of warm hominess to it, even though it is very emotional. You have that family and the bond and working with the horses and such. So yeah, those ones were 5 stars for me. But again, it is a little bit angsty, a little bit dramatic, and so it's not going to beat some of these other books. Next, we have Finley Donovan Rolls the Dice by El Casamano. This was another one for my birthday vlog. And yeah, at first I was like, I don't know about this one, because it is, I mean, they're this is the 4th book in the series. They're all a little over the top, a little bit ridiculous. But the other ones were really funny, and I could really suspend my disbelief. This one, at first I was like, okay, this is a little much. But once I really got into the story, I think this one's my favorite out of all of them. They're not in her hometown anymore. You still have all the same characters. Her and Vero, which is her nanny / accountant, end up going to Atlantic City, and then her ex-husband's like, you can't take the children unless I come along, and then her mom's like, well, I'm coming along. And then you got all the police that come, and her sister and everything. So you still get the whole crew, but being kind of set in a different place, I really enjoyed, like, the setting of it. And I just really like how these characters, and in this case, I think Finley is really kind of coming into her own. And after, her divorce and everything, she's really kind of coming into her own. And you see that in this book, which is what I really liked, because in the other book, she's a little bit like hesitant, and she's not as firm in her beliefs, I don't think, where in this one you really see that growth again. And I just had a great time with this one. I'm not a big cozy mystery person. I will say, I mentioned this in my vlog, that I think where this one ended would have been a perfect place to tie up the series. There is supposed to be another one coming out, and I really don't think we need another one. And honestly, I think I'm going to end it here. As much as I love these books and they are 5 stars, cozy mysteries aren't really my thing overall. And I just, based on where this was left and how it wrapped up everything from these first 4 books, I just don't see myself enjoying it any further, because I don't see how they're going to bring back certain things. But I did really, really love this one. I'm not in it for a big old long series. Like, I think that's one of the weakness of cozy mysteries, is they just tend to take it too far sometimes. And then next, this is the one that replaced my R title. And so I read it at the very beginning of the month, and that is Run by Kody Keplinger, who I think is the author of Duff. Yeah, it's right there on the cover. It's the author of Duff. This has a disability rep. The one girl is blind. It kind of has like a class bias. So you have these 2 friends. One of them is blind and is like from a well-off family. They're very protective of her. And then the other one is kind of the town outcast, very poor. Her mom is, substance abuse and everything like that. And they end up going on the run, and they're trying to find the one girl's dad. And so they're just on the run together, and you see the friendship. It is very emotional at times. And I love the disability rep in this one. Like, very, very, very good. Like, I really enjoyed this one. And it was nice to pick it up. like I said, it replaced my R title, and I probably wouldn't have picked it up anytime soon otherwise. So I really did like that. And let's see here. Then we have our Wrinkle in Time books. So this is a trilogy, and so one of them, or Swiftly Tilting Planet, was for Conjuration under Necromancy, the Q level, and then A Wrinkle in Time was for Conjuration under Godseer, the Q level, and that was books that have won an award, which A Wrinkle in Time and A Swiftly Tilting Planet, and one of her other books, A Ring of Endless Light, I want to say, have all won awards. And so I read these three. These are all rereads for me. And so bottom of the barrel is the second book, which is A Wind in the Door, which was just extra because I wanted to read them all together. And in that one, it's kind of lower than the other two. I still really enjoyed it, but Charles Wallace is like, it's more like on a cellular level and such. Which was a little bit over my head, and I didn't enjoy it as much. But I still love the whole trilogy. I never read the last two books. It's a quintet, and I never read the last two books, but I did end up getting them for my birthday, so I will read them at some point. Then my next favorite is probably A Wrinkle in Time, which was the one I was obsessed with as a kid. I read it over and over and over and over again. And basically you have Charles Wallace and Meg, and their dad is missing. And then you have Mrs. Who, Mrs. Witch, and Mrs. What's it, I want to say. And they kind of help them, and they end up going to this planet that's run by a brain and trying to save their father and such. And Charles Wallace is a little bit more, like there's something more to him. And so I've always loved A Wrinkle in Time. And then my favorite is actually the third in the book, which is A Swiftly Tilting Planet. Third in the series, which is A Swiftly Tilting Planet. And that one, you're more messing with time stream, which is something I just absolutely love. And so Charles Wallace, and Meg's older in that one, and then Charles Wallace is older as well. Obviously, like they're both older. Meg's married and pregnant now. And yeah, Charles Wallace is trying to find a win that happens, or has to name something. But they're going through different points in time and like different reiterations of kind of like the same name and like the lineage and such. And I just really, really like that one. And so that one actually beats A Wrinkle in Time, even though A Wrinkle in Time will always be very nostalgic for me. I love them both, obviously. Then let's see here. Then we have the other Wayside School. So Wayside School is Falling Down, again by Lewis Carr. This was the one I had as a kid, and I absolutely loved it, and I still love it as an adult. Like, I think this is far superior to the other ones. And again, you just have little snippets of the students from Mrs. Jewell's class on the 30th floor, and it's just fun, and it's funny, and Miss Mush and her mushrooms, like, it's such a good time. And I'm not drawn to humor a lot, and I love how this one in particular is done, and the little snippets of the class, and everything, and like having that background from the first book, you can really enjoy this one a little bit more. And yeah, I'm obsessed with this, so that one obviously is a 5-star. And then we have the other Bunnicula books. And so bottom of the barrel is Return to Holiday Inn by James Howe. And so in one of these, they go to Holiday Inn, and this one, they're going back, and I really like the Great Dane. There's kind of a theater element to this, which I really, really enjoy. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of the puppy again, and he's present in this one. So there's that one. And this one was for restoration. And it was Night Sky. This is under Godseer, and you can see the big moon behind him. That might actually be a light. Well, anyway, I did it for Night Sky. I thought that was a moon, but it might be a light, a flashlight now that I'm thinking about it. And anyway, but we also have some of the other ones which could maybe have a Night Sky. So we have Holiday Inn, and then Bunnicula was the top one. And Holiday Inn I really like. They go to this kennel You don't have Bunnicula in that one, which is a little bit sad. It's just those two. And they're in this kennel and they're trying to kind of solve something that's going on. And then in Bunnicula, I already kind of described that. And so Bunnicula is obviously the first one where Bunnicula comes to live with them. And I love Bunnicula so much. And Bunnicula was for lore under Godseer, and that was a book about vampires, I believe. And The Vampire Rabbit is a book about vampires. So then we have another series. And so we have the Enchanted Forest Chronicles by Patricia Reed, I think is how my husband and I decided it's pronounced. And so we start actually with book 1 is my least favorite of the series, and this one was for dragon riding. I needed to read 2 books about dragons to get my dragon riding license, or my character to get her dragon riding license. And so I read book 1 and book 2 in this series. And so in dealing with dragons, so the author actually originally wrote book 4, Talking to Dragons, and then she was reached out to write like a short story, and so she wrote a short story that involved part of book 1, and then that person reached out again and was like, you should turn this into an actual children's story and a children's series. And it was originally supposed to be a trilogy, but the middle part she needed to break into 2 parts to set up for the 4th book, which she had already written. So in dealing with dragons, you have Cimarine, and it's following her viewpoint, which one of the things I love about the series is you have different viewpoints each book. But in the first one, you're following Cimarine, and she's a princess, but she's not your typical princess, and she doesn't want to do typical princess things. And what I love about these books is they really poke fun at fairy tales. And so she's trying to get out of an arranged marriage, and she decides to become a dragon's princess. And she finds this dragon and becomes a princess. But there's wizards in here and they're being kind of shady. And so they're kind of having to discover what's going on there. Then the next book, which is the other one for dragon riding, is Searching for Dragon, which is told by Mendenbar. And that's Cimarine's love interest, and in this case, he's the king of the enchanted forest, and something's going on with the enchanted forest, and somebody's basically kind of making it look like it's the dragons, and so he's gonna have to go meet with the king of dragons, which one of the things I love about this is the king of dragons is a female dragon, but king is a title and a job, has nothing to do with gender with the dragons, and so I absolutely love that. And so he's basically having to work with, try to find out what's going on, and he ends up having to work with Cimarine because they're having to try to find the king of dragons who has been kidnapped. So there's that. Then we have Calling on Dragons, which is told by Morwen, who is a witch, friend of Cimarine and Mendebar, and a witch of the Enchanted Forest. And in this one, it's quite an adventure. Morwen has a bunch of these cats, and she's the only one that can hear them, because they're her cats and nobody else can hear them, and so you get the conversation with the cats, where in the other ones you don't get that. But now that's told by Morwen's point of view, you do get that. And there's this donkey, and it's actually a rabbit, but he keeps getting like these magical enchantments, and he turns into this blue donkey that can fly. It's just so much fun. I absolutely love that one. But my favorite is the last one, which was the one that was written first. And so it kind of makes sense, kind of the progression. But in this one, you have, what is his name? Daystar. And it's his point of view. And he's set into the forest, and he has to kind of figure out his quest on his own and what's going on. I'm not going to say what because it will spoil the other books. And yeah, it's fun, and he meets this fire witch, and so they kind of get involved and go on this quest together. And they have this dragon who is still young and hasn't decided whether to be male or female yet. And so it's just a dragon, doesn't have a name or anything like that. And it's just fun. And there's a cat in this one as well. And I absolutely love these. My husband gifted these to me. I can't remember if we were still dating at the time or right after we got married, but he gave them to me. He was like, you need to read the series. And I absolutely adore it. So this is my second time rereading them. But like I said, it definitely gets better as it goes. And the fourth one is my favorite. So there is that. Then we have our top reads of the month. And so there's quite a lot to unpack. So first we have Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. My sister gifted this to me for my birthday. She read it and sent it to me, and then she's like, I can't wait to talk to you about it. This was so good. I knew I wanted to read this. Like, every time I see somebody talk about this book, I'm like, I want to read that. And so my sister was looking for recommendations. I recommended it to her. And I'm so glad she sent this to me because I absolutely loved it. It deals a lot with grief and kind of like marriage and relationships and like acceptance and whatnot. So basically, in this, you have Magos and her husband, and their son dies, and so she ends up taking a piece of the son's lung. That gets a little graphic, like trigger warning for that. She takes a piece of the son's lung and then nurtures it, and it grows into Monstrilio. And he's hungry. He is hungry. He has instincts. He wants to eat. But they're nurturing him and raising him. And I liked how this one was set up. It did follow like different viewpoints as well. So each section is different viewpoints. So it starts with Magos, and then her friend, and then Joseph, who is her husband, and then Monstrilio. And yeah, it's about grief and accepting the people you love, and like there's a lot of depth to this. I believe this is his debut author. This author's debut book. And I can't wait to see what else this author does. Like, this was so good. Like I said, a little bit of a trigger warning because it does deal, a little bit graphic at points. And Monstrilio does eat things, but is really good. I highly recommend that. Then the other one, which was another one for my birthday vlog, and this was also for alchemy, under herbology, and that was Shark Heart, A Love Story by Emily Habeck. This was a book that would make you emotional. It definitely did. This is another one that kind of deals with grief. And so you have, what's their name? Lewis and Ren. And Lewis, in this world, you can mutate into an animal. It's a disease. And Lewis gets one of the rarest form of the disease where he's going to mutate into a great white shark. And Ren has like her own kind of trauma and such. And never was really interested in getting married. And then she marries Lewis, and he pretty quickly gets diagnosed with this disease. And so it's kind of about their marriage and working through this disease, like loving each other through this disease. And then kind of the grief and loss of this losing your partner to a disease and such. So obviously it's kind of magical realism, like speculative, but that's like what it really is dealing with. And I did not expect this to hit me so hard. I bawled at one point. Like, it hit me hard. I was crying, and I was just like, I'm so glad, like, this doesn't really happen. Like, I mean, it does, because, like, what it's actually dealing with isn't the fact he's turning into a shark. It's, like, the disease and the progression of the disease and losing your loved one. Like, that's what it's dealing with. But it hit me hard. And I will say, like, this is told in very short, choppy chapters, which is typically not my thing. And that's one thing I didn't love about it, but it was so impactful, like, it really didn't matter. Yes. Then these next ones are all, like, I did my best as far as which one I wanted on top, but they're all kind of even kill with each other. So I reread The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. This was for spells and incantations under necromancy Q level, and that was a book that was in one of G's videos, like as long as it was in one of her videos, and I kind of went back, and this one was definitely in one. And then I do have the next one in this series, which I'm hoping to sneak in October, but we'll see. And so this one, basically, you have the Undertaker, Mercy, and Heart is a marshal for the Tanria, which is this like walled or enclosed like place in the middle of this island where the old gods used to be trapped and such, and there's like monsters in there now, so the marshals have to kind of patrol and make sure the monsters, which are kind of like zombies, like the souls, infect, they kill people and infect their bodies basically. And so they have to protect, the surrounding towns, make sure nothing gets out and such. And Heart and Mercy is the enemies to lovers. They're pen pals, but they don't know it's each other, so there's that pen pal element. And Heart is a demigod, so you kind of have that element as well. And then Mercy, you have the family undertaking business, which is kind of going under. There's kind of the big corporation that's trying to, shut down all the mom and pop shops. And yeah, I loved it just as much as I did the first time, if not more, since I was able to kind of grasp a little bit more the second time around. But the Heart and Mercy together, like I love them so much. I love their story. I love the family. Like Mercy's family, like is really really good. And yeah, I loved it just as much. This was a reread for me, and it was an extra one, but I was one that I was happy to because I knew I wanted to get the second one for my birthday. And so I knew I wanted to reread this one and then jump into that one, which I'm glad I did because I was like, who's Twyla and Frank? And they're a very small part in this one. Alright, I don't know what they were barking at, but that's okay. So anyway, I loved Heart and Mercy, and I can't wait to read Twyla and Frank, but they're a very small part in the first one. And the third one, I was like, who are those characters as well? But now I know, from rereading the first one, so I know kind of what's coming. And then let's see here. Then we had another one for my birthday vlog. And this was also for Conjuration under Necromancy, which was D level, and that was The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. And this one was for a book with a map, I believe. And I know this one does have a map. So, and this one, another one I just really loved. It was slow kind of to start, but once it got into it, I loved it. There's a demon in here. And the way the demon and what's her name? Amina? That's the title. Amina and the demon kind of play off each other. I absolutely loved, and they're kind of going on this adventure. She's kind of being blackmailed to go find this girl, which is the daughter of a previous crewmate of hers who died, and she kind of feels guilt about that. And then she brings back some of the core crew from before, and so you kind of have like the true family element, but also a found family, and there's a sea monster, and this mythical treasure hunt, and the demon. Like, it is so much fun. It's supposed to be a series, and I don't know when the next one's supposed to come out, but hopefully sooner rather than later, because I really, really enjoyed this one. Then we have the one. This was for Restoration under Godseer, which was key level. And that was Poisonous Plant on the Table. And that was, Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I will say, like, this one I counted, like, under the log for Orilium and everything like that. But it did spill over, and I finished it, the beginning of October. But I read the bulk of it, the last day of September. So, and I had reread it before, so this was a reread for me. But anyway, I counted it because I just needed a little bit more time, and if I hadn't had to take Boo Boo to the vet, or my mother-in-law hadn't come over, I would have for sure finished this. But yeah, I love this just as much as the first time. It took me a little bit longer to get into because I kind of knew everything that happened. But once I got into it, like, I loved it just as much. I love the vibes. Death as a character is something that I absolutely really, really enjoy in books. And so having Death as a character in this, but basically you have, oh my god, Signa. I just read this. Signa. You have Signa, and Death kind of follows her throughout her whole life. But she can't die. And so she finally ends up with the Hawthorns, and Death kind of preceded her there. And so Lillian Hawthorne, which was the wife, had died, and then Blythe, the daughter, is very, very sick. And so she's trying to discover, what happened to Lillian and what's going on with Blythe, and who's doing it, essentially who killed Lillian and who's poisoning Blythe. But you have Death as a character. The family themselves is a lot of fun. And yeah, the vibes of this book with, the Regency element and coming out to society, but then the death and the mystery and everything, like, just, it has the perfect vibes. And I know I love the second one even more than this one, and I have a feeling I'm going to love Wisteria even more than both of them. But this is a 5-star as well. And then last but certainly not least, because it's my favorite of the month, we have The Darkness Within Us, which is book 2, and then The Shadows Between Us, which is book 1 of this is by Trisha Levenseller. I think it's just the Shadow Between Us duology. I don't know if it has a series name, but I don't know which one I prefer, honestly. I put this one on the top because I think I prefer this one a little bit more than The Darkness Within Us. But The Darkness Within Us is following, what's her name? Chrysanthemum? I think? Chrysantha. Basically the same thing. Chrysantha. And she's married to this old man. And she's like, just gotta kind of put in my dues. She's always been like the proper daughter. She's the older one. Just kind of have to put in my dues until he kicks the bucket, and then I can inherit everything. Only when her husband dies, then suddenly this mysterious, I think he was a nephew, shows up and is claiming the inheritance. And so she's having to figure out what's going on there. And he has a secret as well. And this was also for my birthday week. And then in the first one, you have her younger sister, Alessandra. And she has a plan to woo the Shadow King. But he has a secret as well. And so it kind of has this fake dating element because he has no plans on ever getting married. But his counsel is kind of on his back about it. So he ends up getting into like a fake dating relationship with Alessandra. But somebody's trying to murder him. And so her whole plan is to marry him and then murder him herself so she can inherit the kingdom. But somebody's trying to murder him, and so she's trying to work to help discover who has the plot to murder him. And I really like this. The shadow magic in here is really, really cool. I like they said, the secret of this one. Her love interest has a little bit of a secret, but the shadow magic is really, really cool, and I absolutely adored this. These ones I was saying, so like, this one more so than this one, but one of my favorite movies of all time is Ever After with Drew Barrymore, and this one kind of had vibes of that, like, not really, because like it's a lot darker and such, but there's one moment where she said something about him being her match, and it just gave me those vibes. And then there's also a scene in here, like, there's quotes from Damon Salvatore from the Vampire Diaries in each book, like at the beginning. And there's one scene in here where it's like a boxing scene, and that felt very reminiscent of one of the episodes of the Vampire Diaries. But yeah, these ones, I love Trisha Levenseller. Like, the Bladesmith duology is still by far my favorite, but these are probably the next set of duologies, and then probably the Pirate, Daughter of the Pirate King series duology. But I love this one. This one was for spells and incantations under necromancy, which was a 5-star prediction, and it was. So that is all the books. Now we just need to do my top 3 real quick. I know this video is extra long, but 54 books is a lot to talk about. So my number 3 spot goes to The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. The pirate element, like, I love a good pirate book, and this one was excellent. I love the mythical treasure, like the kind of the lore behind it was awesome. The relationship with the demon, like, I ate that up so much. And then the family component, like I said, she's doing what she's doing to save her daughter, and then she also kind of feels that guilt and like, I need to take care of the daughter of my crewmate as well, who is that found family element. And so you definitely have that found family with her crew, but you also have her true family with her willing to do anything to protect her daughter as well. Then we have Monstrilio as my number 2 spot, by Gerardo Samano Cordova. The family love / acceptance. Like, they really have to, and you see like the different levels of it. Like, you have one, Uncle Luke, who fully accepts Monstrilio for what and who he is. Like, he's just like, you do you. You want to eat, you go eat. And then you have like the parents who accept him in different ways and on different levels, and then the friend as well, who's like, he is a wild animal, he's not human. Where the parents are like, well, he's human, but the one is more like, well, if he needs to do whatever, like, we need to just try to help him be better, but he is his own individual. And then the other one kind of compares him to the child, they lost and everything. Like, it's so good. The animal instincts, like, I really like Australia. Like he is hungry, he wants to eat, and I don't know, I was just so drawn in by that. The grief element, like, it is really about grief. Like, what would you do to try to keep a piece of your loved one alive, especially a child? And then, like I said, I did like how it was broken up into the different point of views. Sometimes I wish like we had another point of view during one, like when it was Magos' point of view. Like, sometimes I wish, like, what was Joseph thinking at that moment, but I really liked how it was laid out. I really enjoyed that. And my number 1 spot goes to Shark Heart, A Love Story by Emily Habeck. The marriage aspect, like that relationship and working through this together, I absolutely love that. Again, the grief, it hit me hard. It hit me hard, and I like books that kind of deal with grief and processing that and whatnot. I like that mutation, specifically the shark element. I love sharks, especially great white sharks, and it was just such an interesting component to the book. And then the kind of childhood trauma. Ren has childhood trauma that she's having to work through while processing all this. She had to work through it in order to even get married a little bit, and then now she's having to still process that while dealing with this. And so I really enjoyed that. But that is it for all these books. Like I said, it was an insane month. I am so proud of how many books I read. Like, I never want to do it again. It was crazy. And like, the only reason I was able to do this was because the majority of them were children's books. Like, there's no way this would have actually happened if I hadn't read a lot of children's books, But even the children's book, like, a lot of them were around 200 pages and did take some time. So, but I'm very pleased. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these, if you're interested in reading if you're interested in reading any of these. That's a tongue twister. What your favorite book of September was, I would love to know that down in the comments below. If you don't know what to comment, you just want to let me know you're here and you want to support the channel, you can always leave a rabbit or any type of animal emoji down in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.